Morning Joe apparently has another show now called Morning Mika, where it's just Mika, not Mika and Joe Scarborough. So I know, cringe. Anywho, someone sent this to me. They apparently are trying to find a way to shame young people once again. This time it has to deal with dating and the fact that they're not getting married. But what is this really about? And I'm going to teach you how to read between the lines here and to pull back the cover off what they're really trying to explain to you. In this panel, you'll see there's Mika, there's also Simone Sanders and Jen Psaki. They are complaining because young people are not getting married. Young people are not dating. I wonder why. Let's get into it.
A growing number of younger Americans aren't dating. They're not hanging out. And no, they're not even hooking up. For so many women who want to date men, dating has become a total nightmare. And there are a number of reasons why. I'm Mika Brzezinski here with Simone Sanders Townsend, Huma Abedin, and Jen Psaki. So I have heard from a lot of young women who want to date young men that there are none. There are no guys. They're trying to connect. They often use dating apps, but find a total lack of connection. And it seems that the men they are meeting don't really share the same priorities.
All right, let's go ahead and interrupt there. So first of all, why are they so concerned about whether or not young people are hooking up? Now, all of a sudden, this is a cause for concern. Why are they so concerned? They're saying these young women are not meeting men. They're not dating. It's just not happening. They're having problems out there. First of all, as long as I can remember, and yes, I am married, but as long as I can remember, even when I was single, dating was never what I would call easy, especially once you were out of school. Once you were like not in high school or you were no longer in college, I do feel like dating was even more difficult than it was when you were in school. But I never remember dating being easy. But why are they concerned about this? Why are they upset that these kids are supposedly not hooking up? What can happen when you hook up? Tell me in the chat. What can happen? There's a possibility of pregnancy, right? You could get pregnant. Having children, right? They want you to have kids. Someone said STD. Come on, CM. Come on. What if? Come on, CD. Why you go there, CM? CM said STD. That's true. That can happen. But they want you to have children. Why do they want you to have children? Those children don't remain children. They grow up, they become adults, and they have to get a job. They want workers. They want more workers. We'll get into the rest in just a second. Let's continue.
If they show up. Women, especially career-driven women, say the men they're meeting are more interested in sex and not looking for a deeper connection, and that it's becoming more and more of a problem. So what's changing?
So here we're going to go ahead and debunk something she just said, right? So earlier she told you that they're not even hooking up, but now she's telling you that the women that she spoke to said that the men just want to have sex with them. But I thought you just said they weren't hooking up. So which is it? Let's continue.
Not that long ago, people used to meet each other through work, let's be honest, or through friends, maybe at a bar or in a college campus. And it gave people a chance to actually learn about each other, to break through the filters, to demonstrate kindness and show commitment and values, to actually earn affection. But today, so many people are living life through a screen. They're not going out nearly as much, not to church, not to movies, or even to the office. Opportunities to fall in love are falling by the wayside, meaning people are making decisions by swiping left on their smartphones rather than truly learning to connect. The highs, the lows, the disappointments, all of that stuff. It's all part of the process. And it's affecting mental health too. According to a recent study of people over the age of 18, those who used swipe-based dating apps experienced significantly higher rates of psychological distress, anxiety, and depression. Another study showed a link between using dating apps and experiencing loneliness, dissatisfaction with life, and this is a big one, a feeling of exclusion from the world, feeling so left out.
Let's pause here for just a second and see what else is happening here. This is a way, in my opinion, of them to get you offline. They want the young people to get offline. Now, yes, do some young people spend too much time online? Absolutely. Some people are online on Twitter all day. Some people are online all day, yes, but not everyone. Why do they want you to get offline? Why are they trying to pull you away from the social media apps? Remember, Morning Joe, these are the same hosts who criticized the TikTok videos that were pro-Palestine. They criticized the TikTok videos that were telling the truth about Israel and the apartheid that happens in Israel. Mika and Joe Scarborough criticized that. They said these kids are getting all their information online and they're getting misinformation. So they're talking about dating. And yes, like I said, I never remember dating being easy, but this is also something else. It speaks to the fact that they want the young kids to get off of social media. They don't want the young kids to get their information from social media or independent media. They want you to listen to them. So it's not just about the dating. Now, I want to highlight this comment here, and we're going to get to this as well. 4737 said, no, Sabby, it's not about them wanting workers. Men just don't want relationships with modern Western women because they're vile. We'll get to that in just a second, Carlin, but let's get back to the video.
And when women do go to coffee shops, what we're hearing is that they try, or to a club or the grocery store, or anything where they get out and interact with people, they say the men that they want to meet just don't share their ideals. It's partly because so many young men are spending their lives also logged in, overly influenced by a flood of whatever you can find online, porn, video games, toxic masculinity. Who needs the real thing when you can get something better, and I put that in quotes, by scrolling? Here's what Scott Galloway, professor of marketing at NYU, told us on Morning Joe about some of the reasons why men are becoming like this.
I think you have the most talented, well-resourced people in the world and companies trying to convince a young man that he can have a reasonable facsimile of life in his basement behind a screen. You don't need friends. Go on Reddit or Discord. You don't need to get a job. Go on Robinhood or Coinbase and trade crypto and stocks. You don't need to go through the rejection and the expense and the humiliation and working out and having a plan and humor and showering to get a romantic relationship. You have YouPorn. So we have an entire generation, especially of young men, who are out home sequestering from society and missing out on what it means. You know, there's a reason romantic comedies are 2 hours and not 15 minutes. True victory in life is hard. Going out, meeting someone, finding mentors, finding mates, that stuff is hard, but that's what real victory in real life is like. And because a lot of men feel rejected on dating apps, the number of jobs that are accessible to them has gone down. You have essentially a group of men who are saying, I want a low-risk entry into life, and they go down a rabbit hole. When they don't have social connections, and they don't get out, and they don't have the prospect of a romantic relationship, they're more prone to conspiracy theory, they're more prone to misogynistic content, they're less...
There it was. Did you hear it? More prone to conspiracy theories. And that can be anything nowadays, right? So they are really, really frustrated about the information that younger people have learned about the creation of Israel, that younger people have learned about the US government. Don't forget how angry they were when they saw that younger people were talking about Osama bin Laden's letter to America, which somehow had resurfaced over the past couple of months. So don't forget about that. Don't forget that The Guardian removed that article that contained Osama bin Laden's letter to America after it started trending again on TikTok. So he just let it out the bag right there. Conspiracy theories, he says.
It's likely to lead in climate change, and some become really bad citizens. We are producing too many of the most dangerous person in the world, and that is a young, broke, and lonely young man.
So here we are. It's all men's fault. Blaming the men, young, broke, lonely. Right. Economics doesn't have anything to do with this, right? Dating isn't cheap. Dating is expensive. Everything costs more now. Everything. Imagine if you go out on a date Friday night with one girl, and then Saturday night, another date. And depending on where you're going to, that could easily almost be $200 because you're not just paying for them, you're paying for yourself too. Everything costs more now. So there's that. We can't forget about that. They want to blame the men. They want to blame the women. They want to blame young people. They want to blame everything other than what's right in front of their face. They don't want to point fingers at the economic reasons. They don't want to point fingers at the fact that a lot of people cannot afford to get married. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to start a family. And for Mika to sit up there and say, these young kids are stuck inside and they're stuck on social media, they're not meeting people in person. Well, you guys seem to be totally fine with that during the pandemic. During the pandemic, you guys were totally fine with the states that decided to lock down. And if you didn't live in a state that was locked down, don't come for me, because my state was locked down. And if you did not have that experience, you don't know what that experience was like, where everything was closed. You couldn't even go to the grocery store at a certain time of the day. The morning hours were left for elderly to grocery shop. So you had to go within a certain window to get food from the grocery store. Not to mention, you're mad at the kids being online. Were you mad about that when they sent the kids home to learn remotely? To do school at home, and not all the kids had the resources that they needed to do well, and that's why the grades suffered? Were you upset about that then? Don't people realize that part of the reason why some people are still heavily online and not doing as many things in person is because some people still have pandemic brain? Those of us that lived in the lockdown states, I know people today that still don't feel comfortable going to events that have a larger number of people. It's very real. So where was that criticism then? You're talking about something that lasted for not just a couple of months, you're talking about a couple of years. And then you're mad that people don't want to get close to each other. Didn't you tell us to stand 6 feet apart? Let's continue. It's a hot mess.
Wow. As Professor Galloway pointed out, 1 in 3 relationships used to begin at work. Now young people are not going into the office as often. And if you are a young man at work, are you more or less inclined to express some sort of romantic interest in a potential partner now than you were 40 years ago? The answer is clearly no. And by the way, men and women have been told in many places that if you have feelings for someone at work, you have to go to HR first. That'll kill the moment. And I get why that's the policy. I get how we got here. Having said that, the unforeseen consequences of the Me Too movement, or of Me Too in general, and the problems that began the movement, that's a show we need to do at some point. And we have to have a really honest conversation about that. But that's not this show.
So look at who's on this panel, right? So you got Jen Psaki, of course, you got Simone Sanders, right? So all of these women are of a particular class. A lot of younger people are broke, not because they choose to be, but because everything is so freaking expensive. You got young people living like minimalist, trying the minimalist lifestyle, not necessarily because they want to, some do, but also because they can't afford it. They can't afford all these things. So remember that when you listen to this discussion, these women are of a particular class. I'm not in their class. I think a lot of you watching are not in their class. Some of these women on this screen are making millions. So it's easy to say that. and point fingers at these young people for not dating as much as you want them to, but they also don't have the means that you have.
Saying having to go to HR is kind of a hard start. Jen, why don't you start? What are the biggest concerns you have here?
Yeah, look, Mika, first of all, I met my husband at work at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He asked me out over email and brought me ice cream. It was a much more traditional way of meeting someone. Look,
of course she did. I personally do not recommend dating your coworkers. You guys do whatever you want to do. But as someone who did that in the past, it's great as long as it works out. It's great as long as it works out. But if it doesn't work out, and then you realize the dude turns out to be kind of nutso because you're not dating anymore, and you still got to work there. Not just necessarily dating at work, but imagine dating someone in the same department. I don't recommend that at all.
I think the biggest concern I have here is the mental health impact on young people. And we've seen that in statistics and a ton of reporting about the disconnect. And you just went over a fair amount of it for men, certainly, and also for women. And I just think anecdotally of talking to a lot of women I work with, who I have the pleasure of working with on my team, they, men and women have been wanting to just have sex for decades, right? That's not new. I think they're still probably they're hooking up still, right? But it's more about that deeper connection. And as Scott said, relationships are work. Emotional connections are work, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever it may be, or a mentor relationship. And there's such a cotton candy aspect of the world we're living in right now. That's also a fantasy world, right? You mentioned porn. That's, of course, on the sex side. But it's also just how people portray themselves on social media. It's not connected to the difficulty and the struggle that often you have to go through in order to have the most rewarding relationship, the most rewarding friendships, the most rewarding mentorships. And the mental health impact is the biggest concern, because connection is what makes life joyful. And that to me is what I worry about the most.
Let's talk about the mental health concerns here, right? So I would say that I think a lot of younger people that are dealing with depression or loneliness, and don't get me wrong, there are clinical diagnoses here for some people as well. But I think a lot of this is coming from capitalism, being broke, not being paid enough, food being expensive. Think about young people and what they're told about their future. The future doesn't look too great for them. Doesn't look too great. How do you expect them to feel? How do you expect them to feel when they're doing what they were told to do? They're choosing to go to college and get these degrees so that they can be successful, only to find out a lot of these jobs are disappearing because of AI or because of failing companies. How do you expect these kids to feel? There is a genocide happening right now, but you say you're concerned about their mental health? Are you? All of these women are out of touch. This is a big part of the problem. I don't know if this is supposed to be like this Morning Mika segment now is supposed to be like their version of The View, but these women are out of touch with these kids. I worked with these kids, so I know how they feel. Why don't you ask those kids what they really want? These kids would rather have experiences than things. And if that means they want to go see the world, they'd rather go see the world than have a bunch of stuff. And some of you on this panel are sitting in penthouses, Mika. So it's easy to point fingers at these young kids, but you're not in their shoes. And Mika's never been in their shoes because Mika comes from a wealthy family, a well-recognized wealthy family. Let's go on a little bit more. It's cringe, I know.
Yes, Simone, Americans are more lonely and isolated than ever. There's data on this. And what do you make of Professor Galloway's remarks on Morning Joe that we're producing too many of the most dangerous people in the world, namely young, broke, and lonely men?
Mika,
were you worried about us being lonely when you told us to stay home? When they told us to stay home during the pandemic, when they told us to stand 6 feet apart from people, were they worried about us being lonely then? Were they worried about that? Were they worried about when they told us don't have contact with the delivery person coming to your door, just tell them to leave the stuff outside and do no contact delivery? Were they worried about us being lonely then? No. During the height of the pandemic, when they were promoting the lockdowns, none of these women on this panel were worried about your lonely ass.
I thought that a lot of Professor Galloway's comments were interesting. I listened to the whole segment twice yesterday because one, I think that people are going out, and also I don't think that I didn't meet my husband at work. I actually met my husband going out. I was at an event. After the event, some folks introduced, at the time he was what was known in Washington, D.C. as the Nightmare. And some folks that I know asked me, oh, do you know the Nightmare? I said, I've heard of him. I do not know him. I've never had the pleasure. And that was I like to say we've been dating ever since. I think he might take issue with my timeline. So I would argue that people are going out in different social settings. But I also think the apps, for example, are not terrible. One of my best girlfriends met her husband on the apps. You know, I know a lot of people who are meeting folks on the apps, and it is opening up, frankly, the world of the dating pool bigger than just who comes to your neighborhood bar or who you might see in the office. And so I think that is a good thing. Look, I think.
Pause. Is this the woman? Miss Winnie says Humma is dating George Soros' son. Cringe. The woman here in the bottom left-hand corner? I thought she looked familiar. Interesting.
About these lonely, broke, dangerous men. I don't really know, Mika. I'm not sold on the lonely, broke, and dangerous men. I think that we are producing a generation of younger people who do not have hustle and drive, and the lack of hustle and drive one is where I do agree with Professor Galloway, and that there's a younger generation of people who would rather be home than go out and socialize.
Pause. So do you see what's happening here? Young people don't have hustle and drive, and let's go ahead and debunk this word hustle because it really pisses me off. Hustle should not be promoted. Stop saying this, okay? Can we stop saying this? I got my hustle. Yeah, I got 2 jobs because I had to get a hustle. I got my hustle on. Stop saying that as a positive thing. There is nothing positive about having to hustle. What that means is that capitalism is not working. That's what that means. What that means is that you have to work multiple jobs and you can barely afford to take care of yourself. That is not something that should be praised. I do not like this praise of hustle culture. So for Simone Sanders to sit there and say they don't have hustle, they don't have drive. Nah, Simone, they're just not willing to sell out the way that you did. Okay, they're not willing to kiss the right asses like you did to get in your position. It really bothers me when people talk down about the youth like this. Once upon a time, we were all a part of the youth too. Once upon a time, I was in high school too. I was in undergrad too. And so was Simone. And think about what the other generations were saying about you when you were younger. So I'm a millennial. You know all the things that they said about us. They don't have hustle. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything. A lot of these kids want to save the world. They don't have hustle. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything. They don't have hustle, but they're out in the streets protesting every chance that they get. They don't have hustle and drive, but they're staking out. They had these encampments at the university for days, but they don't have hustle and drive. But they don't have no hustle. They don't have no drive. They just don't have the drive for what you want them to have the drive for. And I get really sick of these conversations where they're just bashing young people like this. It's really disgusting. Really disgusting. Not one young person on the panel. So who we got here? We got Jen Psaki, elitist. You got Simone Sanders, ass kisser and elitist. You got Mika, grew up in a wealthy family and is elitist. And then you got Humma here, who, according to the person in the chat, said is dating George Soros' son. Who the hell are all of you to talk about somebody having drive and hustle? You got to where you were because you were either born in it or you kissed up to the right person to get there, boo. Okay. Okay.
But I think the idea that folks are not going out, that folks are not socializing is not true. More so, I think it's that the pool of men that women would like to date is smaller. There's more women than men. It has always been that way. When I moved to Washington, D.C., that's what everyone said. It's like, for every one guy, there's 10 women that want to date him. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I see the numbers that you're talking about. I really connect with your reticence about the lonely, broken, dangerous. I guess the inference that you have to have a woman to fix that. Like, you can fix that yourself, and not be, I hear you about personal responsibility for sure. But I'm seeing in my world and hearing from a lot of young people who work with me, who work for me, who they don't go out as much. There's like nowhere to go, or no one to go with, or it's the same old every time, and they're on the phones so much. And whom I'm wondering, given the consequences of loneliness and isolation from a policy perspective, because the Surgeon General recently declared it, the loneliness is an epidemic. Is there an obligation on the part of our government or policies to address some of these growing social disconnects that are happening in our country?
So, I mean, I agree with so much. My mind is just spinning with thoughts hearing all three of you. And I'm glad you referenced the Surgeon General, because the four of us talk about this a lot, that we are pioneers. We're raising a generation, surrounded by technology that we just didn't have access to growing up. And we're still seeing the short and long-term impact of that. I love that you just mentioned the Surgeon General report. We talk about it in the context of just this. We're talking about it.
Yeah.
When you look at things like smoking, it's not that we think people are going to quit smoking or stop using tobacco, but when you buy a cigarette, it will say there's a warning that this is bad for your health. I was at an office meeting the other day and I saw, a box saying, here's, if you need Narcan, it's in this lockbox, get help. It's not that we think people are going to stop using drugs and that there might never be an overdose again. We are aware of it. We have a solution to it. And this is all part of public policy and the importance of having public policy. And I think to have that 80+ page report, number one, you have a Surgeon General who addresses his own issues with loneliness, deep feelings of loneliness, and what governments can do and schools and communities and parents can do. And to both what Jen and Simone just said, I think about this. I met my ex-husband at work, and I met my current boyfriend, and I will say, in a period where I was feeling very lonely and was invited to this party. I did not want to go. I just wanted to stay at home and just probably be on my phone, watch The Diplomat or something. Mm-hmm. I dragged myself to that party, and that is how I met him. And so it's we have to talk about it, but we also have to be open to experiences. Sometimes even at our generation, we have to push ourselves to do it.
So apparently, Eric has brought to my attention that Huma also was a former Hillary Clinton aide. So there you go there. So let's talk about the male-female issue here. One of the things that was raised in the chat about what Carlin said. It's just that men don't want relationships with modern Western women because they are vile. So let's talk about that for just a second. The women that they spoke to that are part of this survey, I'm interested to hear what type of men were they looking for, right? Are you looking for wealthy men? Are you looking for a guy that's making six figures? Does he also have to be tall, dark, and handsome? Does he have to drive a nice car? Because I think the more requirements that you have, if you're looking for all of that, I think it's going to be easier to say, oh, there's just no guys out there they don't want to date. Right. So that could be part of it as well. And in reference to what Carlin said, it makes me wonder as well. Is it true? Could it be true that some men just want something different now, and maybe they're not as attracted to what has become of women in the United States? I don't know. I know some of my male friends said they are more attracted to international women. or they prefer a woman that is more feminine. There are some guys that do want women that are more feminine. And maybe it could be the male female roles in a relationship. There are some men who still value that, where they want to be the head of the household, that type of thing. I don't know. What I do know is that the more requirements I think that you have, the harder it is going to be to find someone. And not just find someone, but it's like you have to find someone, but you have to find the person that you actually end up having some type of chemistry with, and who has chemistry with you back and likes you back. This is why I've always said I never remember dating being easy. I never remember that. You could like someone and they may not like you, or vice versa. And then you just may not ever fall in love with that person. You know, it's not as easy as people say it is. So what Ozzy said, go find me a Russian. Oh my God. But I think the reason that they're more concerned is, again, because if younger people are not getting married and they're not starting families, then obviously that means that the population is not increasing. And they want the population to increase. They want younger people to have kids because they're thinking about the labor force down the line. And this is another thing that I think Elon Musk had talked about this before, where he said people need to have babies so that the labor, you know, we need people to work. We need workers. There's that. But the other part of this conversation that I really want you to just pay close attention to, what they're really trying to do. They're trying to get the younger people to get offline, to get away from the social media apps, and to just basically listen to them, MSNBC and mainstream media, because of the information that younger people have been discovering from social media, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. You got to remember, again, Morning Joe was very critical of the younger kids that were protesting for the support for Gaza. They were very critical of the encampments, and they were very critical about young people not being pro-Israel. They brought the leader of the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, they brought him on Morning Joe multiple times since October 7th. So this is another thing. So it's not just about young people aren't dating and they're lonely. And by the way, just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely. So there's that. It's not just about young people not dating. I think this is a worker issue. And I also think that they are trying to control the level of information that younger people are getting. Because other than that, why do you care whether or not young people are hooking up? Why do you care about that? Because I don't. Like a mess. Let's go to some of the comments. Oh my God, there's a lot of them starred for this one. JB says capitalism is the biggest cock blocker of them all. We are broke. It's true. Oh man. Thank you, 16 Voice. Trust me, there ain't no men for women talking down men like that. Yeah. It's always the man's fault. You notice that? Thank you, Sparky. Nerds run the world now. By definition, nerds are socially challenged and have turned the last couple of generations into nerds who wouldn't know how to go about hooking up. Hey, nerds unite. Sebastian said, where's the conversation on the lives of young gay men? That's a good question.